Welcome to Whispers of History, where forgotten tales, strange events, and mysterious moments from the past come alive. One whisper at a time. Subscribe, relax, and let the past whisper you to sleep. Imagine yourself waking before the first rays of dawn, when the night still lingers heavy on the mountains. The camp where you sleep is little more than a scattering of rough huts or tents, their roofs patched with straw, their walls thin against the wind. The earth beneath you is hard. The blanket across your shoulders is not enough to ward off the chill. And yet, as the horn sounds in the distance, you rise. You must rise. The workday does not wait for comfort. It begins with movement, slow, weary, but unbroken. Men stretch aching joints, tie rough cloth around their waists, and shuffle toward the place where carts and ropes await. The first task is always the same: move the stones. The Great Wall was not a single structure, but a series of fortifications, repaired and rebuilt across centuries. For those caught in its making, it felt endless. From one horizon to another, stone after stone was hauled, lifted, and set in place. Workers lived their lives beneath its shadow, their days measured not in hours, but in the rhythm of toil. Meals were sparse, and often unappetizing. A bowl of millet porridge, sometimes thin enough to see the bottom. A scrap of pickled vegetable. Water drawn from wells, carried in buckets, often warm and metallic with the taste of the earth. You would rise before the sun, eat quickly, and join the line. Stone after stone, lifted from carts. Carried by hand, sometimes by rope. Your shoulders would ache before the morning had fully broken. Your palms would blister. The air would be thick with dust, yet there was little space for complaint. Supervisors watched closely. Soldiers patrolled the camps. Escape was nearly impossible. For many, being sent to the wall was not a choice but a sentence, punishment for crime, for rebellion, or simply for being too poor to refuse. Still, there was a rhythm to life at the wall. When the sun rose higher, you might pause to sip from your water flask, wiping grit from your brow. The laughter of a fellow worker, rare and subdued, might float through the dust. And as strange as it may seem, there was also companionship. The burden was shared, and in the quiet moments, bonds were formed between strangers who had nothing else but labor to unite them. The wall itself rose slowly. Each day, each week, each season, stones were stacked, bricks were set, foundations deepened into the earth. For the men who built it, the wall never seemed to end. They did not see a mighty structure stretching thousands of miles. They saw the single block before them. The rope in their hand, the calluses on their skin, and when night returned, they lay once more beneath the sky. The same stars you see now were above them, though they offered little comfort. The wind swept over the plains, over the ridges, whistling against the newly placed stones. Sleep came quickly, for exhaustion has no rivals. And morning, always, was waiting. The stones of the Great Wall were not small. Many weighed hundreds of pounds, far beyond what one person could lift. They were quarried from mountainsides, pulled from riverbeds, or shaped roughly from local earth and clay. Imagine standing among piles of these blocks, the sharp edges pressing into your palms, the rough weight digging into your shoulders. Every day began and ended with these stones. The quarry itself was a place of noise and grit. The strike of iron against stone rang endlessly, echoing across valleys. Splinters of rock stung the skin. Workers wrapped cloth around their heads to shield themselves from dust, though it was never enough. With baskets, poles, and ropes, they carried stone fragments to carts, where oxen groaned under the load. Once loaded, the journey began. Creaking wooden wheels cut into the earth, leaving ruts in the dry soil. Some workers pushed the carts, others pulled with ropes fastened to their waists. The air filled with the groans of effort, the grunt of strained muscles, the sharp commands of overseers urging speed. When the ground became too steep, stones were carried by hand or on crude stretchers. For men, sometimes 6, bore a single block together. Their feet slipped on loose gravel, their shoulders rubbed raw from the rope. Yet they pressed on, step by step, because the wall was waiting, at the worksite itself. The process was just as punishing. Stones were heaved into place, one after another, lifted onto scaffolds of timber. Wooden pulleys creaked as ropes strained, and every man below prayed that the block would not slip. Accidents were common, and a falling stone could crush a man instantly, but most of the time, the rhythm continued without pause. A block was set into place. Earth was tamped around it. Another block was lifted. Another stone was dragged. From sunrise to sunset, this pattern repeated endlessly, and the wall crept slowly upward. Every muscle ached. Backs bent until they felt as though they might break. Some men tied cloth around their waists as crude supports, others wrapped strips of leather around their palms to protect from the rope burns. Still, nothing could fully ease the strain, and yet, even in this exhaustion, the sight of the wall growing taller gave some a strange sense of purpose. They could point to the rising stones and know that their sweat was shaping something vast, something that would endure long after they were gone. At night, men collapsed on straw mats, bodies trembling from the day's burden. Some rubbed their shoulders with herbs or shared sips of rice wine if they were lucky. Tomorrow would bring the same weight, the same stones, the same bent backs. The sky was endless, and so too was the work. Not everyone who labored on the Great Wall arrived in the same way. The workforce was a patchwork of humanity: peasants pulled from their villages, criminals sent as punishment, prisoners of war, and even soldiers ordered to put down their weapons and lift stones instead. Their fates intertwined, their voices blending into one weary chorus of effort. For peasants, the summons often came suddenly. A decree would arrive in the village, demanding labor in place of taxes. Families would gather in silence, wives clutching children as husbands were led away. Some returned years later, worn thin and hollow. Many never returned at all. For prisoners, the journey was harsher still. Shackled in groups, they were marched across long distances, guards at their sides. Their chains clinked in rhythm with their steps. Some dragged heavy iron collars. The wall was their punishment, a sentence often harsher than execution, for it stretched across years of relentless toil. Soldiers, too, were sometimes ordered to join the labor. When battles subsided, or when their loyalty was in doubt, they were given shovels instead of swords. For them, the humiliation of labor was bitter, though the stone did not care whether hands had once gripped a spear. Despite their differences, these men shared the same hardships. Hunger gnawed at them equally. The sun burned all shoulders the same. The dust did not choose who to choke. Slowly, the lines between peasant, prisoner, and soldier blurred, and only the bond of survival remained. Occasionally, songs rose among them. Low, rhythmic chants that helped keep time as they pulled ropes in unison. These voices carried across the valleys, weaving into the wind, becoming part of the landscape itself. But harmony was fragile. A quarrel could break out in moments, a peasant blaming a soldier, a prisoner refusing to lift his share. Overseers intervened quickly, their whips snapping against the air. The price of defiance was severe, and most men learned quickly to swallow anger in silence. Still, in the quiet hours, bonds formed. A soldier might share a strip of dried meat with a peasant. A prisoner might trade a story in exchange for a sip of water. Beneath the vastness of the sky and the unending stones, they were simply men, weary, fragile, and clinging to fragments of humanity. At night, when the camps grew still, the sound of chains fading into the darkness, the wall loomed as both prison and shelter. It bound them all together, not by choice, but by fate. The Great Wall stretched across deserts, mountains, and plains. Wherever it wound, the men who built it had to adapt. Their camps were scattered along the work line, temporary, rough, and bare. A hut might be no more than a frame of wood patched with mud. A tent might sag against the wind. Comfort was rare, and the land itself often seemed hostile. In these camps, sleep was uneasy. Mats of straw or thin blankets were spread across dirt floors. The air seeped in through every gap, and in winter, frost crept across the walls. Men huddled together for warmth, their breath clouding the air as they drifted into uneasy dreams. Food was as scarce as warmth. Most meals were little more than millet porridge. Sometimes thick, sometimes watery, depending on supply. Occasionally, dried vegetables or salted radish added flavor. Meat was rare, a luxury seen only during festivals or when livestock was butchered for overseers. Hunger was a constant companion. Water, too, was uncertain. In mountain camps, springs had to be tapped. In deserts, wells were dug deep into the sand. Sometimes the water was brackish, other times it was warm and metallic. Still, it was life itself, and men drank it with reverence. The dust was everywhere. It clung to skin, seeped into bedding, and coated food. When the wind rose, the air turned brown, stinging eyes and throats. Workers tied cloth over their mouths. But the dust always found its way in, filling lungs until each breath felt heavy. Despite the hardships, men created small comforts. A fire might crackle at night, its warmth drawing tired bodies close. Someone might carve a wooden spoon, or stitch a patch onto a torn tunic. These small acts of survival gave rhythm to existence, softening the relentless cycle of labor. In the summer heat, shade was the only relief. Men rested briefly under makeshift awnings, fanning themselves with scraps of bamboo. Sweat soaked their clothes, leaving white salt stains behind. Even resting, their bodies trembled from fatigue. At night, when the wind calmed, the stars shone brilliant over the camps. Men lay staring upward, dust still clinging to their skin, bellies half empty. The sky felt eternal, as if mocking the frailty of their bodies below. Yet in its vastness, there was also a kind of peace, the quiet reminder that even suffering belonged to something greater. And so the days and nights passed. Dust filled their lungs, hunger pulled at their stomachs, and cold gnawed at their bones. But they endured, because they had no choice. Survival itself was the only reward. To work on the Great Wall was to live in the company of death. The body, pushed beyond its limits, often gave out. Exhaustion came first, a deep ache in the muscles, a heaviness in the chest, a staggering weakness that no night's sleep could repair. Yet the work demanded more, and men pressed on, until their strength failed entirely. Illness spread easily in the crowded camps. Dysentery flowed through water that was not clean. Coughs rattled in lungs heavy with dust. Fever burned through the weak. Once sickness took hold, survival was unlikely. Medicine was scarce, and healers were few. The overseers rarely allowed rest. If a man could stand, he was expected to work. And if he could not, he was left behind. Sometimes fellow laborers shared their food, hoping to keep him alive another day. But more often, the sick faded quietly, their strength ebbing away until morning found them still and cold. Burials were simple, hurried, and often shallow. A pit dug near the wall, stones placed loosely over the body, earth pressed down. Markers were rare, though sometimes a small pile of rocks or a carved wooden tablet was left behind. In time, the wall itself became a vast graveyard, holding the bones of countless unnamed laborers. For those who remained, death was a constant reminder. Each morning, they stepped past fresh graves. Each evening, they lay down knowing tomorrow might claim them too. It was not spoken of loudly, but it was felt in every glance, in every quiet pause of silence around the fire. Superstition grew in the camps. Men whispered that the spirits of the dead lingered near the wall, their voices carried in the wind. Some left offerings of rice or lit small candles, hoping to calm the restless souls. Others tied red strings around their wrists for protection, believing the color could ward off death. Still, fear did not stop the work. The stones were heavy, the wall unfinished, and those who lived carried on for the sake of survival. The grief of yesterday had to be set aside, for tomorrow's burden was waiting, yet in rare moments of calm, beneath the stars, there was reflection. Men thought of their families far away, of the children they might never see again, of the homes left empty in the villages. Death was near, but so too were memories, carried quietly in the heart. The wall grew taller each day, fed by sweat, blood, and the bodies of the dead. And though the laborers did not know it, their sacrifice would be remembered not in names, but in the stones themselves, standing long after their voices had faded. Amid dust, hunger, and exhaustion, men turned to stories. Legends became a refuge, a way to explain suffering, a way to give meaning to endless labor. The Great Wall was not only a barrier of stone, in their minds, it was alive with spirits, memories, and voices that rode the wind. One tale whispered along the camps was that each stone held a soul. To drop a stone, to place it incorrectly, was to anger the spirit inside. Men often tapped a stone gently before lifting it, as if to soothe what lay within. Another story spoke of dragons sleeping beneath the mountains. It was said that the wall followed the dragon's back, its winding form not chosen by men but by the beast itself. To defy the path of the dragon was to invite ruin. So the workers followed its invisible spine across valleys and ridges. The most haunting legend was that of Meng Jiangnu. She was said to have traveled far in search of her husband, only to find that he had died during the construction. In her grief, she wept at the wall, and her cries were so deep that a section of the stones collapsed, revealing his bones. Her sorrow became a symbol of the countless women who lost loved ones here. Belief in ghosts was strong. At night, the workers said, the wind carried voices, whispers of the dead calling to the living. Some swore they saw shadows moving along the wall even when no one was there. To keep the spirits calm, offerings were left, bowls of rice, cups of wine, and sticks of incense burning in the still air. To ward off bad fortune, charms were tied to clothing or tools. Red strings were most common, bright against the gray world of stone and dust. Workers believed the color kept misfortune away, creating a small shield of protection amid great uncertainty. Even the stars became part of the stories. Workers lying awake under the night sky said the constellations mirrored their toil, a line of stones above, stretching endlessly, as if heaven itself had its own wall. They imagined the souls of dead workers climbing into those stars, freed from dust at last. These legends softened the harshness of reality. They wove meaning into the endless stones, creating a quiet bridge between human suffering and something larger. Stories gave shape to grief, and belief gave courage to endure another day, and so the wall rose, each block not only shaped by hands but also by myths, by prayers, by whispered hopes in the night wind. Its stones held not just weight but memory, silent testimony to both the living and the dead. The Great Wall did not rise from the will of the workers alone. Behind every stone was the vision of emperors, rulers who believed that the wall would define their reigns. secure their lands, and display their power to the world. For the men at the base of the wall, this vision was both distant and crushingly near. To the emperor, the wall was a symbol, a shield to keep invaders at bay, a declaration of strength, and a monument that would endure across centuries. But for the farmers and peasants conscripted to build it, this vision was a burden that turned their daily lives into unending toil. The emperor's reach was vast. Orders spread across provinces, gathering not only peasants but prisoners and soldiers as well. Men who once tilled fields or worked small trades now found themselves lifting stones and digging trenches under the open sky. Families left behind often struggled to survive without them. The emperor's officials promised safety, that the wall would protect their villages from northern raiders. Yet for the common laborer, the danger of invasion felt less immediate than the hunger gnawing at home, or the exhaustion breaking their bodies. Protection for the future came at the cost of suffering in the present. Punishments ensured compliance. Those who resisted conscription, or who fled their posts, faced severe consequences: flogging, imprisonment, or even death. The emperor's dream left little room for personal choice. For the workers, duty was not voluntary, but enforced. Yet even as they labored under duress, workers sometimes allowed themselves to imagine the emperor's vision. Perhaps, they thought, the wall truly would keep their children safe. Perhaps their suffering, though unseen, would mean something lasting. These thoughts, fragile as smoke, were what kept some men moving forward. Still, for most, the emperor was a distant figure, a name known, but a face never seen. His ambition stretched across mountains, but the weight of each stone pressed only upon the backs of the ordinary. The emperor's greatness would be remembered, while the workers' names faded into dust, and so the wall rose higher. For the ruler, it was triumph. For the people, it was burden. Between the two lay a chasm, bridged only by stone, sweat, and silence. In this way, the emperor's vision became reality. Yet it was a reality carved out of countless lives, each stone a testament to the unseen sacrifices that made the dream possible. The Great Wall was not the only monument to human endurance. Across the world and through the ages, rulers commanded vast works that consumed countless lives. Each structure bore its own story, yet they all shared the same quiet truth: behind grandeur stood ordinary people, laboring under heavy burdens. When one thinks of ancient endurance, the pyramids of Egypt come to mind. Massive blocks of stone hauled through desert heat, aligned with precision to honor kings. Much like the wall, the pyramids promised permanence, a legacy carved into earth itself. But for the laborers, the daily rhythm was the same: sweat, exhaustion, and the silent hope for survival. In Europe, cathedrals rose slowly, taking generations to complete. Stone by stone, families devoted lifetimes to a vision they would never see finished. The Great Wall shared this same endlessness, a task stretching beyond any single man's life, reminding workers that they were part of something vast but impersonal. In Mesopotamia and South America, ziggurats and temples rose under the direction of priests and rulers, symbols of devotion and power. The wall, too, bore a spiritual weight for those who built it, not in ritual but in legend and fear, as though the stones themselves demanded reverence. Yet the wall was different in scale. It stretched farther than the eye could follow, longer than empires themselves. A monument not confined to one city or one dynasty. For the workers, this meant the burden had no horizon, only the knowledge that tomorrow's labor would mirror today's. The echo of suffering tied these monuments together. Farmers in Egypt, masons in France, peasants in China, all left behind little record of their names. Their sweat became invisible, absorbed into the brilliance of rulers' visions. And yet, the stones endure as silent witnesses, holding their stories even when history forgets. Even in modern times, massive projects still require invisible labor: roads, railways, dams. The burden shifts but never fully disappears. The Great Wall remains a reminder that behind every grand achievement lies a human cost, one often unspoken but deeply felt, and so the wall stands not alone, but as part of a global chorus. The echo of pyramids, cathedrals, ziggurats, and temples resonates through its stones, reminding us that human endurance, though often unseen, is universal. The stones do not speak, yet they whisper in silence, that greatness is not only built by vision, but by sacrifice. Centuries have passed since the last stone was set into the Great Wall. The camps are gone, the overseers silent, and the workers long buried. Yet the wall remains, stretching like a patient shadow across mountains, deserts, and plains. It watches still, holding the memory of those who gave their lives to its stones. Travelers today walk along its pathways. They see the stones, the towers, the views stretching far into the horizon. For many, it is breathtaking, a symbol of human achievement. Yet beneath its beauty lies the weight of forgotten labor, the quiet voices of men who once struggled here. In some places, the wall is crumbling. Time has worn down towers, plants creep through cracks, and stones lie scattered. Nature, slowly and gently, reclaims what was built with so much hardship. The sight is peaceful, but it carries a melancholy reminder: even the greatest works yield eventually, yet not all is lost. In preserved stretches, the wall has become a place of memory. People come not only to see its length, but to feel its weight, a history carved into stone, a story larger than any one life. Legends still linger. Guides tell stories of Meng Jiannu's tears, of dragons shaping the wall's path, of restless spirits in the wind. Though centuries have passed, these tales are still carried, tying present travelers to the workers of long ago, from high watchtowers. The view stretches across ridges and valleys. It feels as though the wall is not just stone, but an observer, a silent witness to generations. Where once soldiers watched for invaders, now the wall itself seems to watch over time. For those who pause quietly, the wall becomes more than history. Standing upon it, one feels the weight of footsteps that came before, the countless laborers who trudged these paths, carrying burdens too heavy to imagine. The stones beneath the feet are not only rock, but memory. And so the wall endures, not only as a monument of empire but as a silent grave of workers. Though their names are gone, their strength remains, etched in every stone, every curve of the wall, every watchtower standing against the sky. In its silence, the wall continues to watch, guarding not only the land but also the memory of all who built it. The wall stands silent now. Its stones no longer echo with the shouts of overseers or the groans of men bent beneath heavy loads. The camps are gone, the dust has settled, and the toil has faded into history. What remains is stillness, the quiet endurance of stone, and the memory of lives once bound to it. To imagine being a worker upon the wall is to step into hardship, hunger pressing at the belly, cold biting at the skin, and exhaustion sinking deep into the bones. Yet it is also to step into the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to endure, to carry on, even when the horizon seems endless. For centuries, rulers dreamed of security and power. The wall became their monument. But for the workers, it was simply survival: one more day, one more stone, one more step. Their names were forgotten, yet their labor endures beneath our feet. Now, as we look back, we can see more clearly. The wall is not only a symbol of empire, but also of ordinary lives. It carries the memory of countless men and women who gave their strength, their years, and often their lives. Their sacrifice is silent, but it is not lost. Today, we lie in beds far softer than the ground where they slept. We eat meals far richer than the millet porridge they knew. The comfort of the present is a quiet gift, a contrast that invites gratitude when remembering the past. The wall itself has become a place of reflection. Tourists walk its stones, families take photographs, and scholars study its history. But if one stands still and listens, there is something more, a whisper in the wind, the soft memory of those who once labored here. Their story is not told in names or records, but in endurance itself. They remind us of the cost of greatness, of the fragile line between vision and burden. And they remind us, too, of the resilience of those who endured, carrying the stones of history so that others might stand in their shadow. And now, as the wall watches quietly over hills and valleys, we may close our eyes and rest. The weight they carried has passed. The stones stand firm, so that we do not have to. Rest comes easily when we know the past is behind us, and the present holds warmth, softness, and peace. Another whisper from the past, now fading into the night. Thanks for listening. Subscribe for more sleepy stories from history. And until next time,